So, guys, the Cavs laid an absolute whomping on the Dallas Mavericks yesterday. They were up by 50 points at one point, and they
had 50 in the first quarter.
50 in the first quarter, 91 in the first half, which was a record. So there's not a ton to break down on the game itself because it was just an absolute demolition derby after the Mavs came into the game with like 7 healthy players after the Luka trade. So I wanted to kind of ask this question. We talked about some potential trades for the Cavs last week. We did the bigger trades on Thursday. We talked about deals that got them under the luxury tax on Friday. And one thing we said was chaos would be good for the Cavs. It may open up some possibilities. So let's get your reaction first off to the AD for Luka trade and the De'Aaron Fox of the Spurs trade. And then let's figure out if those blockbuster deals will have any impact on what Cleveland wants to do and or is able to do at the deadline on Thursday. Gee, start us off. What did you think about these blockbuster deals over the weekend?
So, first and foremost, I'm actually confused. I don't know how it got to a point where Luka was even available to start with. Second of all, this trade had to be facilitated by ownership. There was no way you could be talking this long, Jason, to these people and this stay under wraps. The owner must have woke up and was like, yeah, go ahead, press go on that. And the third thing is, what the Mavs got Minimowski. They got, Anthony Davis is what, 31?
Yes.
He's 32.
32. Luka's 25. Right, he just went to the finals last year.
Oh, he turns 32 next month.
He turns 32. Obviously, Luka is a top 5 player in the league, and he's well loved. He's beloved, and the fact that you only shop this to the Lakers, I'm like, there's teams around the league that are like, listen, why didn't you open this up? You only got him in a 1. You could have got that and a massive haul. There would be teams lining up around the league trying to figure out what it was. So I'm looking at the insider over here trying to figure out, A, how they keep it under wraps, B, why the Mavericks moved him, and C, if they moved him, why did they move him for an aging player that could also not stay healthy? Jason, I'm confused.
I like AD and Kyrie together. If they win a championship in the next couple of years, does that change all of this?
Yeah, of course
it does.
Of course.
Okay, so let's start there. Because I actually like that pairing.
Okay.
Now, the broader conversation, absolutely they could have got more for him. 100% they could have got more. And that's where my struggle is, because I think the Mavs could win a championship with those guys. I thought they could with Luka as well. And obviously there was concerns with Luka long-term committing the type of money and the type of dollars he is. And the big question that I don't have the answer to is this the start of what you – like teams have tried for years. I'm not calling Dallas a small market team, but small market teams have tried to find ways to hold on to their stars. That's been a big thing in the NBA is these guys that we draft and we develop, you got to give us a better chance to be able to hold on to them. Well, now they've done that, and we've seen that in recent years where guys – sign the deal in their city, stay an extra year, and then they get traded. So cap space isn't as valuable as it was 10 years ago because it used to be go back to the Miami Heat, clear out the cap space, and bring in these free agents and sign them as free agents. Now it's more through trades to where these guys sign in their current city knowing that they're probably going to get dealt in a year or so, get moved out. So now is it that the money is so exorbitant that the teams now want off of these deals, or is this a one-off? I tend to think this is a one-off. This is a rare situation where a team had long-term concerns about the guy. And
that's it.
And like, I'm not saying anything that probably hasn't been said a million times before. We were in Cincinnati all weekend for swimming, so I didn't follow I slept through the whole thing, and we didn't follow every blow-by-blow detail of this. But the Mavericks know Luka Doncic better than any team in the league. And I think I put in the group chat, typically when a trade like this happens, it's because there's stuff in the closet
because they know something
that they know about that nobody else knows about. And that's why things like this get done. But that doesn't mean you sell low on the guy. And that's the part that baffles me is that, I mean, we talked about it before the show. If Nico picks up the phone and calls Cleveland and says,
we're doing
hey,
that next. Don't ruin that.
Okay, all right,
next.
I won't. So ultimately, I actually don't hate the trade for Dallas in terms of the piece that they got back, because I think they could win a title that way. But they did chop their contention window in half, it feels like, and they sold low. So it's maybe it sounds like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth on that. On one hand, I don't hate the pairing. On the other hand, man, you could have got so much more.
Yeah, I like you. That's the one part of it I just can't get my mind around. And Nico doubled down on it yesterday. I was asking around a little bit yesterday, and it was GMs and executives from different sports. But I said, typically, what's the process of something like this? It was said to me that perhaps Nico had identified AD as his piece. Yeah. It's like the only piece he would have made this deal for.
Yeah.
And that's possible too. He might have looked at, and he kept saying yesterday, defense wins championships. And you could debate that all day long. But that clearly was the impetus for the organization making this move. And if they had looked at the landscape and said, let's find the player that we think matched with what we have now, and I don't hate that pairing either, by the way. I think Kyrie, I think they're going to do very well together. This might be one of those examples, kind of like the equivalent that I was trying to think of is this might end up being like the Rams and the Lions, where both teams got better.
Yeah.
That's entirely possible. Because there are a lot of things I like about this for the Lakers too. But it was said to me, if the Mavericks had made the decision that, okay, peruse the landscape, who's the guy that you can pair with Kyrie that can win a title within the next 2 or 3 years? Maybe the answer to that was AD.
Yeah.
Now, if it was, then the reason he didn't call anybody else or talk to anybody else is because he didn't want anybody else.
Yeah.
He basically, and I do think there are major long-term concerns, and rightfully so, that the Mavericks have about Luka. If you look at his body type and the part of the world that he's from, old age tends to creep in a lot earlier on what we're dealing with him. Maybe they've seen with some recent dings that this thing could go south really, really quickly, and then we've held the asset too long. So I don't know what was going on internally in their conversations, but it was told to me, and after I heard it, I said, okay, that's very likely that AD was their missing link, and he decided, I'm not interested in moving him for just anybody or just assets or more pieces. I need AD, and if I get AD, I think we can win within the next 2 or 3 years.
Hey, McNuggets.
And the time will tell.
Now, maybe you could look into this, and I'm going to ask you this question because you into the advanced analytics. Could it be that they looked at, as great as Luka is, right, and he has the ball in his hands and his usage is very high, what if they said, you know what, we've been looking at it, and we feel like Kyrie is just as good with the ball in his hands, and maybe adds a little bit of this or that to the table. And if we can upgrade our defense, or we can upgrade, getting, rim protectors, and we could do something with AD who could also stretch the floor. Could it be like in advanced analytics, they said, listen, if we lose Luka on paper, people going to freak out. But we feel Kyrie Irving can do some of those same things if he had the ball more.
I mean, maybe. I think they're wrong. Like, Kyrie's awesome, don't get me wrong, but we're talking about Luka freaking Doncic here.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm trying to talk myself into it.
Imagine Friday, okay? Imagine Friday. We're doing the show on Friday. And I said, hey, Mike, imagine if you're the Mavs and the Lakers called you and offered AD and a 1 for Luka. Would you do it?
Hell no.
Yeah, nah. Nah.
You would have laughed me off the set.
They would, like,
the most, and I kind of agree with Jason's point. I did a whole reaction post stream to this yesterday, and like, the AD move with the Mavs, their starting 5 right now is nice. Like, if really Kyrie and AD are healthy, like, that team poses a lot of matchup problems for the Western Conference teams in the playoffs. And Nico Harrison mentioned he looked at how Jared Allen and Evan Mobley played together, and they wanted to kind of emulate that. And I don't think we have time to get into that discussion today. We'll probably save it for another day. But that's a really nice lineup. I don't want to diminish Anthony Davis with anything I'm going to say. If you are trading Luka Doncic, who is 25 years old, a undisputed top 4 player in basketball when healthy, despite the fact he may be slightly overweight, whatever, you have your issues, concerns, how you don't get every possible asset back from the Lakers.
How do you not get through 2031?
I know, that's what I wondered too.
It
And
makes,
I would think that even if they would
it
have
makes
asked
no
for it, they
sense.
would have done it.
Yes!
The Lakers would have done that.
This
it
seems-
goes back to G real quick. Sorry, it goes back to the initial Celtics-Nets trade with Paul Pierce and Mikhail Prokhorov when they ended up getting all the picks that turned
Yeah.
into Tatum and Brown. And the famous story, and this has been confirmed by multiple reports, was that Prokhorov wanted those guys so bad that each time the Celtics would call, they'd ask for one more asset. And Billy King, the Nets GM at the time, would go up to Prokhorov and say, all right, they're asking for a pick swap.
Yeah.
And Prokhorov would say, do it. We want it. Terrible Russian accent. So he'd call back, and then Danny Ainge would be
Do
like, we want another first-round pick. And Billy King would go back. And eventually he kept saying, we're just going to ask till he says no. And that's how they ended up with 7 picks before those kind of deals were even thought of. So, to me, it's inexcusable by the Mavs to not get at least
I
both
agree.
first-round picks back from Dallas.
I think that part of it's malpractice. I do, because they clearly could have pried more assets away. However, I'll go back to something Jason said. And when you texted the group on Sunday, what you texted, and you talked about it, you said usually when a deal like this happens, there's something that the team knows that no one else knows.
Right.
I'm going to guess. I'm just going to guess, okay? That's what we do. From 90% of what we say.
Right.
I'm wondering if Dallas hasn't been on him about his weight and he hasn't been able to get it under control, and they're sitting there going, we're standing on a ticking time bomb here. If he continues to play at this weight, he's going to shorten his career, and we're going to left with an asset that ends up being broken down and unmovable. Let's move now. Let's sell high. And that's, again, no information that that's the case. I'm just judging with my eyes and saying maybe, because I can't explain it otherwise, maybe the weight is a bigger issue than we know.
I'm telling you, this is an ownership move. Sometimes when you get an owner,
Well, Mark Cuban's no longer the owner. And when he
It's a
was
new-
asked about
it's a
this,
new
he said,
group.
I had no idea this was going on.
So they got a new ownership group.
It wouldn't have happened with Cuban.
It would not have happened with Mark
There was
Cuban,
a
no
quote
way.
saying, "If I trade my wife over before I trade Luka."
Yeah.
Now here's the crazy part: if you look at it, when ownership gets involved, things tend to happen quickly.
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. Or Kyrie Irving for Cleveland.
Yeah.
LeBron James himself said, "Don't trade Kyrie." Dagger was like, "No, we're getting rid of him." When an owner gets in his mind, I don't know what he did behind the scenes. I don't know if it was, like we said, hey, the owner called your phone, you don't call it back. You send the owner a voicemail. Billionaires be having real quick fuses sometimes, and they be like, "Listen, whatever." Hey, get whatever you can today.
There's a lot going on, and I don't want to act like I know all of the ins and outs in this because I don't. I just know that there's a lot going on right now in Texas in terms of Mavs are trying to get a new arena. They're trying to get gambling passed in Texas.
That's the big one.
And the
That's the
legislation.
big one.
So there's a lot at stake here that rises well above
Hoops.
the court. And
Yeah.
I don't know how to tie all the pieces together. I could just I know this is going on. Like the gambling issue is huge right now in Texas. They're trying to get a new arena. This new ownership just came in and bought majority control from Cuban. Cuban got out, I think. And that's another piece in all this. And I haven't put all the pieces together, but it's like
The owners are running like
owners
rats off a ship.
owners are running out of the NBA faster than they ever have.
What do
Why?
they know?
Why?
Because it's not as financially beneficial as it once
Because
was.
Cuban out.
Yes.
Mark Lazary in Milwaukee out. The Boston ownership family gone. They're trying to sell.
Yep.
Like these, this is never. We've never seen.
Jason,
teams,
I think it goes to what you said on Friday. This deal that they're currently working under,
it's an awful deal.
It is awful for the owners. Some of these owners are in it not for the money, for the ego, to win. And you can no longer buy your way into a championship, and they want out.
I can't explain how some of the small market owners with not a lot of juice were able to bully Ballmer.
Is it because
Dan.
there's more of them?
I don't know. I wish I could give you an answer. I don't know.
I feel
but
like it's-
how the owners agreed to this, to where like teams that build the right way, and as these guys earn these max money and earn these dollars, the league has made it impossible to keep these teams together. And I totally get trying to crack down on the easy way out of building super teams, of trading for this guy and signing that guy as a free agent. But when you do it right, when you build through the draft, or you make a really smart trade, and Kobe getting in on the Brooklyn deal and stealing Jared Allen for a 1, and then watching him grow with this group, and drafting Darius and drafting Evan. And yeah, he struck at the right time on the Donovan trade. But for the most part, like, this group built its way together and then made the superstar trade at the exact right time. He made a huge gamble on it, and it paid off. Donovan signed the extension. As soon as he signed the extension, the Cavs won that deal. You ought to be able to be rewarded by that, to be able to keep that group together as long as the contention window allows. Financials and the league should not be able to break that apart. And what the NBA has done, you're seeing it in Milwaukee. That's why Lazary got out. They couldn't afford where this thing was going. You're going to see it in Boston, the pressure point this year. What's Boston going to do this summer? They have $450 million committed this summer, more than that, in salary and tax penalties.
Phoenix had an owner change not long ago.
But Phoenix did it the stupid way. And Phoenix, that guy was a pig, and there was a lot of...
There was some behind the scenes
yes,
pushed out.
stuff.
Yes, that wasn't financial.
Out.
But that was Ishbia trying to do what dumb owners do and come in and swing in their... and trying to make big splashes, and they picked the worst time to do that because with the second apron and all these things, you can't do that anymore.
Right.
So Phoenix is not a good example because they did it the dumb way. But Boston, Milwaukee, Cleveland, and OKC are teams that, like, built through the draft, built organically, made really good trades at really opportune times, and now they're going to be punished for it, and I don't believe that's right.
Jason, let me ask you this, just to bring it back to the Cavs before we get into the Cavs Mavs potential dealing if it were to happen. But with the chaos that happened over the weekend, the Luka trade, the De'Aaron Fox 3-team trade that ended with Zach LaVine in Sacramento, Fox going to the Spurs to pair up with Wemby, does that impact or change anything for the Cavs at the deadline in terms of what you think is available for them or how they'll operate in terms of trying to add or subtract from this team?
I don't think so, no. I think I think they're going to continue on. I don't think that they're going to make a big move. I wrote about it over the weekend. We talked about it on Friday. If I were them, I would trade Tristan and Sam Merrill into space and create cap space to get you under the tax line and then try and be active in the buyout market. Danny LaRue is our cap expert at The Athletic. He's really, really good. I talked to Danny about this, and I said, hey, if they do this, does this get them under the line? And Danny said, yes, that gets them out of the tax. So I'm going off his word on that.
Which is really the prudent thing to do here, Jay.
It really is.
It may disappoint some fans, but this is no longer an era where you can just say, guns blazing, let's go for it.
How many points Sam Merrill had last night?
He had 9 threes, baby.
He had
9 threes.
That hurts my heart when I can't. No, can we find somebody else?
Craig Porter Jr.
He doesn't get him under the line, I don't think.
Him and Tristan, though, I thought, together. Isn't Merrill and him the same money?
I would think
basically?
they would be around the same money-wise.
I mean, I didn't think Porter was the same money as Sam.
He's $300K fewer. Sam Merrill this season.
That might actually be the difference, though.
Yeah.
It's very
Merrill's
close, right?
Merrill's at $2,164,000. Craig Porter Jr.'s at $1,891,000.
I mean, if Craig gets him under, sure, yes.
Yeah, I
sure.
would much rather.
Absolutely.
And I like Craig, but I like Sam as a weapon.
The issue is going to be is they're unrestricted free agents this summer. I don't know if the Cavs are going to be able to bring Merrill back anyway after the season. So I looked at that as how many minutes is he really going to play in a postseason series anyway? Probably not many. Because re-signing Ty Jerome has to become the
priority.
The priority this summer.
I think the cool part about this is I think this is shaping up to be at some point. Even though these guys are really good players like AD and Luka, when you trade main pieces and parts like that, it's almost signifying, hey, this might not happen this year. Both of the guys are injury. They're basically injured right now. Like, they're not playing. And when you get two massive pieces, it takes time for that to, like, be cohesive. Now you got Luka out there in L.A. It almost signifies there's a lot of teams that kind of punt it. Like, they're like, okay, we're going to make this deal, but we're looking for future stuff. But the Cavs are the one team who you look at and they say, well, they've been playing all together. They've been playing, the same level of basketball. Guys are familiar with one another. This might be a year that they can take advantage of some of that. If you can get past the Celtics and you can get to a Western Conference Finals, I think, or basically in the NBA Finals, I think that you can play a team that might not be as cohesive as you are.
And in the playoffs, the cohesion matters a lot. We're going to move to a hypothetical here in a second, but before we do that, as we look at what the Cavs might do, and I've said I'm fine with them either staying pat or doing something minor that gets them under the apron. I think that's probably the prudent way out here. But
Gets them out of the tax.
Gets them out of the tax.
Yeah.
And I just think for moving forward, because you don't want the clock to start ticking and because it's so punitive, I really didn't know much about it until we discussed it more in depth last week. Like, this is really, really a hell you do not want to live in if you don't have to.
And quite honestly, to be totally honest, I don't know this. They could get out of the tax this year so that the clock starts next year so that they are not repeat offenders in 27-28, and they still may have to break off one of those pieces because of Donovan's starting salary. If he signs another deal with Cleveland, Donovan's starting salary will be $65 million in 27-28. So It's just and it's not that the Cavs did anything wrong. It's the rules of engagement now.
Hey.
Do you think LeBron had his fingerprints on this at all? Because CBS kind of reported that, or reminded everybody he was had some discontent playing with AD in 23.
No.
He had mentioned that.
I think that they operated. It's funny because
he claimed, I didn't know this was coming.
I don't think he did know, and
Really?
because LeBron's last year in Cleveland, I wrote a big story about this at the time. LeBron's last year here, the organization made a very obvious pivot away from listening to him.
Yeah.
Because for a while, it was whatever LeBron wanted, LeBron got. And his last year here, the organization had a pretty strong indication that he was not coming back. And they pivoted away. They gave him Dwayne. He wanted Dwayne here, and they gave him Dwayne. But a lot of the other moves, I can't remember them all now.
There were things he wanted that he didn't get.
He wanted Griff back, Griff left.
He wanted that the eighth pick. He wanted them to trade that.
He wanted them to trade that. They didn't. He wanted Jamal Crawford here. They brought Jetty Osman instead. They brought Jetty over. There was a few things that they wanted done, that he wanted done, that they went the exact opposite way.
But look at his influence on the Lakers in terms of the coach and drafting his son.
And this feels like
the pivot's coming.
Oh, maybe the Lakers are where the Cavs were.
This is the Lakers,
okay.
I think, doing exactly where the Cavs were, of they're no longer going to listen and take LeBron's influence. I mean, the man's 40 years old. They're not going to listen to everything he said. Now it's going to become
It's
what does
Luka.
It's
Luka
our team
want?
again.
And
It's
no, it's
Luka.
going to become what does Luka want now.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.